My name is Jarrod Kimber, and I am addicted to South African batting. It has been 8 days since my last video on this topic. Okay, maybe that's not true, but it feels like it, and I do apologize. But this team has been doing weird things with the bat, and every time you look at them, it seems to get odder. And of course, everything really comes back to one major issue. They are waging a war on the number 7 position. I've covered this in T20s and tests, but was fantastically excited to see that it also holds up in ODI cricket as well. In fact, of the teams in the world over that time, South Africa have the second worst average, just behind Nepal and in front of their nemesis, Netherlands. And if you're thinking that's because they're swinging hard, well, their strike rate is 69 in that time as well. And both of those numbers have been boosted in recent times by Marco Jansen with a couple of big hits. They were averaging less and actually striking at 64 until recently. Instead, now they are pushing at PNG for the 16th best strike rate in ODI cricket in the number 7 position. Now, they are not trying to be this low. No one would ever want to be here on the list, but this is partly by design. They are playing 5 bowlers and very rarely trying all-rounders, so the chances are that they won't get that many runs from that slot. But even so, under 15 is basically not trying at all. And originally I thought this was a newer thing, but when I looked up the numbers, I was wrong. If you go back to 2010, they've been going through a really rough time in finding number 7s for over a decade now. And traditionally, they have been absolutely incredible in that position. In fact, from 2002 to 2009, they were just behind Australia as the team with the best number 7s. And that makes sense because traditionally they have had Klusner and Callis and McMillan and Boucher and Pollock, these incredible all-round players, meaning they could go into a game with 5 frontline bowlers and still have a lot of heft in those middle positions. And sometimes they would bat as far down as number 9 or 10. And if you look at the highest scoring number 7s in the history of one-day internationals, Pollock is at number 7 on the list, Boucher comes in at number 21, and you also have Justin Kemp down at number 48. All of these players overlapped as well. So it shows just how incredibly strong they were in that position for a long period of time. So my real question was, what happened in 2010 that changed the number 7 position? At first I thought it was Jacques Kallis, because taking a player like him out of your lineup unbalances everything. But Kallis plays until 2014. I did quickly also check his bowling as well, because I wondered if he just stopped bowling at the end of his career. And it's a little bit weirder than that. He was a full-time bowler for quite a few years, and then from 2004 onwards he becomes a part-timer. But if you look at it by year, in 2008 he actually starts to bowl less, meaning that you could need other bowling options. But then straight away he goes back up to his part-time ways again until the end of his career, where at that point he's really much more of a casual bowler. So certainly Kallis doesn't change their team balance until 2012, and to be honest, the last couple of years, while he doesn't really bowl, he also doesn't play that many games either. But then I thought it was Shaun Pollock, because obviously he's made so many runs batting at number 7, but he retires at the beginning of 2008. And in terms of number 7, South Africa actually have the rest of 2008 where they're very good, and then 2009 where they're very good. So I was left with only one other idea. And that one was a lot more sudden, but also a lot more scary. I thought that it might have been Mark Boucher's eye injury when he was wicket-keeping and a bail came off and hit him and essentially ended his career. That changed everything for South Africa. But that actually happened in 2012, meaning his last ODIs were actually in 2011. Again, the timeline is just all out. I mean, in one way or another, all these things played a part because over a couple of years, they all happened. But there doesn't seem to be a clear moment when South Africa went from a very good team at number 7 to a truly horrible one. But over the last few years, they have fully committed to it. And while they have not been a great team in that time, they're still winning way more than half their games. And why are they doing that, other than the fact that they are picking 5 frontline bowlers? Well, let me show you what their top 6 batters are doing in that time. Yeah, they've gone from the 19th best at the number 7 position to number 1 when it comes to your whole top 6. That takes some serious effort. And it essentially means that some of their top order are going to have to be, superhuman. And one certainly has been. Right now, as I sit here in this chair, Rassie van der Dussen is the greatest ODI batter of all time by average, with some caveats. He hasn't actually played 50 matches yet. And Shubman Gill has actually averaged more, but played fewer games. But even so, if you look at his overall career average, but Rassie is currently worth 2 slightly better than average ODI batters to his side. He essentially is their number 7. He's just doing it from the top order. But if you actually take a closer look at this list, he's not alone. In the list of the top 50 batting averages, they also have Quinton de Kock and David Miller. Also, Temba Bavuma is not on this list as he's only played 23 matches, but he's averaging in the mid-40s as well. Oh, and that doesn't include Janneman Malan, who also would be on this list if he had played more matches. In fact, this is the top scorer since the start of 2020 in ODIs. South Africa have 2 in the top 10 and 5 more in the top 50. That is 7 of the best averages all going to South African batters. They can't even fit them all on the one side if they're only going to pick 6 of them. And they really only have one failure, and that is Aiden Markram, who is way too talented to be this low on, well, any list. And recently, while I was commentating with TalkSport on the England-South African series, Soham of CricViz fed me this stat. It shows just how weird Markram's career is. He is almost impossible to get out as he arrives at the crease. But then once he is in, he's kind of dog shit. Like, who does this? How on earth do you get much worse as you get more settled? And we kept discussing Markram all the way through this short series. Darren Goff, Mark Butcher, Mickey Arthur, Matt Pryor all joined me to start going down the rabbit hole of actually why any of this was happening. Because everyone knows that Aiden Markram can bat, and there is no doubt that he can hit boundaries. The Butcher, Goff, and Arthur group went with the idea that it was largely a psychological thing, which I think probably on the face of it makes the most sense. But Matt Pryor and me weren't quite as convinced. We wondered if his technique wasn't actually suited to strike rotation, which sounds like a really odd thing to say. But it's something to do with the very strong bottom hand he has, and the way that he kind of changes his technique between chipping the ball and hitting it very hard. There's something about that middle part of his innings that has always just looked off to me. So we asked CricViz, and they said us this. Now, this doesn't mean that me and Pryor are right. There still could be an element of the psychological issues at play here. It's clear from having a look at this that Aiden Markram is a slightly worse than average attacking player. And he is as good as defending as most other top order players are. But he is absolutely terrible at strike rotation. These are the kind of numbers you'd expect from like a number 8 or a number 9. And why am I showing you this? Well, one, I'm hoping that Markram and his coaches can work on this if they already don't know about this issue, which I'm assuming they do. But mostly I am pointing it out because there are only 2 major flaws in South African ODI batting. One is the number 7 position, and the other one is Markram learning how to nudge. Oh, and we haven't even got to my favourite part yet. You might be thinking, sure, these guys make a lot of runs, but eventually at the death, you have to get to your number 7. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen because they have a low average, so they're occasionally making it to the crease. But it doesn't happen as often as it should because David Miller is the top death run scorer in that period. And he's only doing it with an average of 70. And you know who has the next highest death average in that time? Rassie van der Dussen. These guys do not go out. And they're both scoring at a strike rate of like 140-ish in that period. Ha 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 ha, fake laugh. But these are stupid numbers. This isn't like their test team where the number 7 position is forfeit and their top 6 is as well. This is doing exactly what they are designing. And who was the person who designed most of this? It was Mark Boucher. He's one of the best number 7 batters of all time. He's basically decided that most of his career he wasn't that important. I think that's what he's decided. And so South Africa have just decided anyone who owns his own bat can just go out at number 7. But that is only working because their batters are committed to being superheroes.